Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aaron Rose. I'm the board chair of Silicon Valley Forum, and thank you for joining us today for our fireside chat with Dr. Milton Chen, entitled Why Your Digital Health Transformation Will Be Slow and Likely Hacked. A little bit about Silicon Valley Forum. We are a California-based 501c3 nonprofit organization with a mission to foster innovation, entrepreneurship, and leadership in Silicon Valley and throughout the world. We achieve our mission through events, programs, conferences, as the Silicon Valley Forum functions as a center of knowledge and connections, covering everything from the latest tech trends to the startup and investment ecosystem. And Silicon Valley Forum's activities are aimed to educate, train, inspire, and connect technologists, entrepreneurs, corporates, and investors. We've got a number of events coming up. We've got another fireside chat with Benjamin Talon, and we're going to be talking about thriving to use technology and knowledge for the benefit of all. That is next Tuesday at November 12th. Patricia Bordejo, the Chief Executive Officer of Silicon Valley Forum, will lead a conversation with Dr. Ishmael Plasencia in Spanish on December 4th. We will have our first in-person event in Sunnyvale. It'll be the Silicon Valley Forum's annual State of the Global Tech Sector luncheon, and that will be a week before Christmas on December 18th. And on January 6th, the day before CES in Las Vegas, Silicon Valley Forum is serving as a supporting partner of the Silicon Valley Funding Summit that will be held on the campus of University of Nevada, Las Vegas. That event is co-produced by Enrich in the USA and Angel Launch, and it aims to connect Silicon Valley investors to global startups for high-level networking and deal-making that lead to building successful ventures. And as many of you know, I also serve as chair of the StarTides Advisory Board. And in April, mid-April, we'll be hosting our 18th annual StarTides Capabilities Demonstration at George Mason University's Mason Square campus in Arlington, Virginia. And that'll be followed with the Tides follow-on event in the Pentagon Center Courtyard in Arlington. So to make the lawyers happy, we have our disclaimer that the Silicon Valley Forum, SVF, does not endorse or sponsor any commercial product, service, or activity. SVF's production of this event does not constitute endorsement by SVF or its representatives. All SVF programs and services are extended to the public on a non-discriminatory basis. And we are a 501c3 organization that is operated and funded by the public support, and we thank you for that support. So, ending our screen share. And has the screen share ended, or do you still see it?
It's ended.
It's ended. All right. Still, after all these years, and then post-COVID, still getting used to online. So, Dr. Chen, Milton, thank you for joining us today. And we're going to have a broad-based conversation about your company, VSee Health, and about you and your background and what has transpired in the United States, maybe within the last 12 hours. And speaking of disclosure, I will say for the record that VSee is a publicly traded company on NASDAQ under the ticker symbol VSEE. So I'm very careful of not asking certain questions that will raise the ire of your legal counsel or the SEC. But there are certainly some questions I think our viewers would be interested to knowing about how you manage a publicly traded company and how things have changed going from a privately held to a publicly traded company. But let's start with the big picture. In very basic terms, what's the problem that you and your colleagues through VSee Health are solving, and who is experiencing these problems? Who are your customers?
Yeah, Aaron, first off, thank you so much for the chance to be here with you. I really, really appreciate it. So the basic problem is, if you look at this year so far, people estimate between a third to one half of Americans' health record have been stolen, right? You had the famous Change Health big hack earlier this year, Ascension, you name it. Pretty much every couple of weeks, right? You can see some hospital, some enterprises got hacked, they're stolen, right? It's a mess. It's almost like to the point where if your medical record is in the hospital, is is not an if, but it's matter of just when you should assume your medical record is going to be stolen. So you better think of like, why is that, right? It's not because they don't spend a lot of money on security in there. The root of the issue is you can, when you're building a software system for healthcare, you can either optimize for security or optimize to customize the workflow to what the clinicians, what the patients want, or you can optimize for scalability. You get to pick one of the three. That's it. And of course, doesn't matter which one you pick, a big faction will be very unhappy. So the basic problem that VSee does is I want to give you all three. I want to give you security, I want to give you scalability, and I want to give you the customized workflow exactly what you want and do it fast. So again, so we survey the healthcare enterprises from mega hospital to just a big enterprise, so we can make sure they get what they want on the clinical side, they get the security, and they can scale into the big operations.
So you are selling to, well, I guess, what verticals are you selling into? You're selling into the private sector.
Yeah,
And is that you mentioned medical hospitals and
yeah.
as well as smaller doctor clinics, medical clinics?
We tend to focus on a bigger enterprise. We do have a freemium version for smaller practice. So for example, let's say you're a solo physician practice with a small group. We're welcome, just go on a website. It's super affordable, literally start free there, right? So you get all these features. And having said that, our focus is more into sort of big enterprise where you have like thousands of physicians. You have like the big enterprise. How do you do operation at that scale?
And then I know because you and I met at, speaking of Star Tides, we
Mhm.
met at the
Yeah.
Star Tides demonstration last year,
Yeah.
and we're actually neighbors in Silicon Valley, so we're both residing here in Silicon Valley. But you are selling to the government and not just the U.S. government, but if I can say governments of allies of the United
Mhm.
States, and certainly you don't need to disclose
So
names, but how is government using your platform that would be different than, or maybe the same as a private hospital network?
yeah, great question. Thanks, Aaron. So for the government side, we have a vertical product line to do emergency response at a very large scale. So the idea is, for example, how do you do at a country level? Let's say there's an earthquake, hurricane, massive wildfire. How do you go coordinating all the differences from EMR documentation to if you don't have internet now. So we have an online, offline form capability. You can still continue to operate to do medical reach back, operation dashboard. So that's tend to be for the government, they tend to be sort of interested in those aspects. Yeah. But versus, of course, in the hospital case, really it's a typical telemedicine, artificial intelligence, and those type of things.
Very interesting. I'm putting links in here, and
Yeah.
then because this is recorded, the links for people that are going to be watching the recording of this on YouTube, the links will be found in the description underneath the video because it doesn't come up here in the recording. Um, so that's what you're working on today. That's
Yeah.
VSee. Kind of tell us. Let's go back to the beginning. So you're originally from China. And you, what year did you come to the United States, and why did you come to the United States?
Oh man, it was like it's a long story that I came back. I've been here for a long time in this. I came in the middle of elementary school, and I came here is my grandparents on my dad's side. They were working in the University of Illinois. Where I come from a line of nerdy professors and PhD in there. So we're like So there are my grandfather, my dad's side, he's a physicist in there. So my grandma is in chemistry. They were working there. Then during the when the communists took over. In fact, it was a little bit maybe not to get too political in the. So it was very idealistic. Right? People felt like it was a new country. Like of course the previous government there were a lot of issues from women's rights, all these things. It was not as progressive it could be in there. Of course, people didn't know what the country would be like. So then they were recruited to establish a university in Lanzhou in there. So it's sort of, if you think about China, right, there's like historically the wealthy part on the coast. If you go in the middle of the country, there's like nothing, extreme poverty in there. So they actually went there to set up Lanzhou University. I'm proud to say they were actually there. It's a huge university now. And then, of course, during the Cultural Revolution, they were being maybe not treated well in there, but we still have family members in the US. So again, so I was able to, my parents able to immigrate to come back to the US. So that's where I brought as an elementary students came back. So it definitely is, I'm very grateful to have this American journey experience.
So you grew up, you ended up in Illinois, is that correct?
No, in the San Jose, California.
So okay, San Jose, and then
And
you went to high school in San Jose.
yeah, I went to start. Actually, I started with a Ruskin elementary high school. It's still in San Jose. It's still there. So I went to Sierra Middle School, Piedmont Health. So I went to UC Berkeley for my undergrad. That was fortunate. I went to Stanford for my PhD.
Okay, so you stayed close to home after graduating high school. You went to Berkeley, and then when you finished at Berkeley, did you immediately go to Stanford for your
I
graduate post and doctorate work, or was there a gap?
I did. In fact, now, like thinking back, and I should have took a gap. So to be honest, I was not that smart. I was like I was a big nerd. I was like, I loved to go to libraries. I love research. I love like writing code. I was programming like crazy. I love doing all these things. And then for me, I just felt like, I want to go really deep on the science aspect. The PhD was a natural thing. In fact, I went to PhD. I was thinking I come from a line of nerdy professors. I mean, I thought the natural track is I'll be a professor. And that's right. So I just went in there. In fact, was the only reason I'm even here talking with you why I have a company was during the PhD program at Stanford is a pretty like a lonely journey, right? You're just writing code, you're doing research. It was pretty tough, and then you're going like try to get public in there. I just felt like I want to maybe take a gap between apply as a faculty and because that's a very strange like pretty horrendous process if you will. So I'll take a gap. Okay, what do I do? Okay, how about I just do nothing, right? Well, how do I replace nothing? Well, there's all these people at Stanford doing startups. And I have no idea what startup is. I said, okay, I'll give it a try. Maybe to be honest, right, just to be completely, I was not one of these Stanford people. You go there, they want to build a company. I went there. I was spending time in the library. I loved going to the Stanford Library, check out books, and you look, how those the posts like in the history of the last 50 years, there were like two people check out that book. I love doing that. And just like go deep on research. And I was going to do a little bit a gap, right? Do a little bit, then go back to faculty research. Now, of course, then once I started this, now I love this journey. I definitely recommend to everyone the whole startup entrepreneur. It's just like the most amazing journey ever.
So you started VSee, launched VSee, I believe, in 2008.
Yeah,
So, okay. And you are a co-founder.
that's correct.
So who did you co-found this and you talk about and we'll jump a little bit with the questions here. So how was VC founded? What
Yeah,
was the kind of the purpose behind it at the time? Who's your co-founder? And you mentioned something about research being lonely. A lot of times, being the leader, the head of a startup or a corporation is very lonely. But you have a title called co-CEO.
Yeah.
So let's go back to your
Yep.
co-founder, and
Yep.
then who's your
So
co-CEO, and how do you manage that with your co-founder and co-CEO?
great question. So my co-founder, I'm really fortunate, is Dr. Erica Chuang. So we share the same thesis advisors. I got to know her pretty well during. So her background is at MIT undergrad, MIT master's, and then a Stanford PhD. Again, we're just like hang on the lab together in this. And the thing I really appreciate her, right? So she's a amazing designer, right? Just understand the product experience. I mean, she coming from computer vision, AI experience coming there. So again, so to be honest, when we were starting out, both of us is more on the scientific side versus the commercial side. So they were just, but it was a natural fit in there. Right? Maybe not a natural fit in the startup sense. My guess is if we were to approach you today, say, Aaron, we have the too nerdy of stuff. Where's the business thinking? Well, we have no business thinking. We're a little bit naive, right? So then when we started out, we were very fortunate. Is my PhD was paid for by the U.S. Air Force. So I was very grateful to the U.S. Air Force support on my the entire PhD journey. So my started again, I have no business experience, but I was very fortunate. I met with Commander Eric Rasmussen of the US Navy. So he took a look at what I was building. He said, oh, that's really interesting. So he's been in charge of doing these disaster, like thing, part of the Dr. Linton Wells. And then like in fact I met him in my very first, business trip with Eric Rasmussen. Like, so he said, well, you should really think about doing this for disaster relief, emergency in there. Again, just complete transparency. And that's not a space I'm interested. But I just not I didn't mean interested. Just I never had exposure to that. So he was saying, oh, this is interesting. So he basically took us under his wings, right? So then he was our very first customer. Then through him, then we actually met the investment director through Incutel, the investment arm of the U.S. government. Then we're really grateful that they actually was our Series A investor, and we did that close in about 2008, 2009 timeframe, and then we just sort of took off. And then our initial problem at that time was how do you do secure communication? Again, the theme of everything we do is the idea of secure. It's the idea on my personal bias, right? If you're going to have communication, if it's not secure, then it's usually it's like it's pretty terrible, right? It's how do you do things in a peer-to-peer way? How do you manage the encryption key? How do you stream the video, screen share, and do a way that's actually could be done very securely? In certain cases, you could do even tracelessly in this. So that was the area where I did a lot of research and again a product thing. And then the second part of your question is then about a couple of years ago, then we were approached by a SPAC, Digital Health Acquisition Corp, which are amazing people. That when I got met them, they're just like super amazing people in healthcare. They understand the dynamics. They can just bring a lot of these for business muscle into the thing. And then through them, I met my co-CEO, Dr. Imo Aseku, again, amazing Harvard physician in this. We just felt like it was a nice energy in there. So then we actually now, I guess we've been, VSE has been trading on NASDAQ for about 100 days or so. We thought the best synergy is to have me focus on the technology side of thing, then my co-CEO Emo focus on the physician, the medical side. We think now this create a natural synergy back and forth. We think this is a winning formula for us to create a great company. So this is how me go for me, Erica, co-founder, now me and Emo to do co-CEO.
That's a great story. So, I've always told people that because I've been a co-founder of my own startup firms, and your co-founders are it's a marriage. You actually sign a contract. If there's
Yeah,
if the partnership decides to end, you got to get lawyers. You got to get a dissolution agreement. And so talk about, kind of how do you work with your co-founder in dealing with disagreements? And really, it's a question also towards the CEO. I mean, traditional business school philosophy is that there's only one CEO. When Netflix has, I think they still have a co-CEO, but when they created that, very much criticized by Wall Street. I think Salesforce may
Yeah,
have a
it's a
co-CEO,
consultant. Yeah.
and again, I think they did it well after they became successful. But it still makes the traditionalists on Wall Street a little nervous. How do you deal with conflict? How do you deal with staying in your lane? I'm assuming you and your CEO and also your co-founder have certain lanes, but how do you deal with that and the issue of conflict?
Yeah, thanks for that question there. So I have to say, I love our structure in this, right? Like, so if you go back to the beginning of things, right? So the reasons I think is I was very fortunate, I got to know Erica, all through graduate school. So it's not like a blind date, if you will, right? Like I can know how she operate, and there's like this complementary skill set playing there. So um, I actually have the bias where if you look at like the Google, the Yahoo, right? These are major company that started out. It was not a one person, it was like the two people right going because you can have these bounce ideas out. So for me is I'm a big fan, right? Like it's it's not like you don't make mistake in your decision. It's how fast you can make corrections in there, right? So in that case, we're having a partner in there you can bounce off ideas to someone who really can argue like crazy, then right, it's almost like a classic Andy Grove in the Intels, right? You argue like crazy, then once a decision made, everyone snap right, commit to those things. So I think we use that formula internally as a way to just about it's not so much I'm right or my co-CEO right or my co-founder right. It's like what is the best quality decision? So we make that decision and use new data to refine the decision over time. So that's our formula for doing that. Another thing we do is at the corporate culture is so I see my job as a CEO is more like chief editing officer rather than executive. That's what I mean by this, right? So if you look at our structure, right, we have really strong management in the company. So I do this routinely, right? So so I don't make decisions. My team, my executive committee, they make decision. My only role is more like a sounding board to them, right? They say, oh, here's something, and maybe by the end of the day, they make decision there. So having this natural structure, I think is the only way you can scale. To just give you a funny story, how extreme we do. So we have interns in the company in there, right? So like uh, the if the intern criticize me, I don't need to agree with it. $20, right? Just I'm paying them to criticize me in there. I did the joke that my current chief design officer, Penny, a superstar right now. So she did like 1 year at Stanford. I met her. So she started as an intern. Now she's been with the company for about, like about 15 years. Now she's like in charge of all the design. In the early days, right, literally it's a joke, right? She needs some lunch money. She just makes some random things, criticize me. Okay, great. No question asked, $20, $20, right? So having that type of culture in the right, so that from the intern to anyone in the company, they feel empowered to, right? This is not like my company, whether this is their company, right? Just make decisions and get on top of things and criticize the company. And again, my single focus right, is about making the best decision, like a quality decision based on the data, based on new evidence. And then we think this is a basis where like you can create a great company.
I'm reminded when I still believe in the old-fashioned business plan. I still believe in the 50-page business plan, and not so much for investors, but to me, it's an internal document. It's a
Mm,
roadmap. And so when I've had my own companies, and I'm thinking about ROI3 Inc., we had I think our business plan was 55 pages long, And when every new hire, no matter their position, their first task was to spend 2 weeks reading the business plan. And if they came back to me when we would meet 2 weeks later, and I'd say, ask them, what do you think? And they would say, oh, this is great. This is wonderful. I got kind of reactive. I said, don't tell
Yeah.
me. I said,
Yeah. I don't know.
tell me what's wrong. I said, the odds are, right, most startups, 8 out of 10 on average fail.
Yeah.
So the odds are against us,
Yeah.
and so why are we going to fail? And so
Yeah.
what are poke holes
Yeah.
in the business plan? Tell us on what we're missing, and then again, we're hiring for
Yeah.
them to help us plug those
Yeah.
holes and get
Oh,
us
yeah.
on. But so
I love
I
it.
I appreciate your strategy. Um, so we mentioned that VSee was launched in 2008, 16 years ago. You've been a privately held corporation for 15 years and 9 months or 10 months, and now you're a publicly traded company. How does the management change? How does the expectations change in your strategy going forward? Because one of the criticisms of being a public traded company, and I experienced this in my career, is that all of a sudden you're being graded on a quarterly basis.
Yeah.
Your quarterly earnings are expected to be here, and that changes where you don't have the flexibility. Not you, Milton
Yeah.
Chen, as CEO, but the CEO, the
Yeah.
executive team, it changes. And even when Bezos and Amazon became a publicly
Yeah.
traded company, and Wall Street was saying you're not profitable, and that went
Yeah.
on for years. When are you going to, become profitable? And his thing is, we're in it for the long game. So not asking you to comment about
Yeah.
your earnings or that, because that's
Yeah.
not appropriate here, but how does the strategy change? How does your role change after you recently have become a publicly traded company?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely appreciate it. The first thing is I'm a first time NASDAQ, CEO like for these, right? So I'm still like completely transparent that I'm still like learning the ropes in there, right? So I'm not a seasoned there. But I would say so far in this, right, it really has not changed. Of course, there's like regulatory dealing with the NASDAQ, SEC, like attorney, accountant, like an auditor, right? That's definitely is an additional thing. So it just the things you need to do operate in that market in this. But if you look at my day-to-day job, right, what our company do, like we're in the long game, right? So we're building these sort of foundational building block, right? So when we think about it, right, how to guarantee our clients, patient data security, how do we minimize the chance of they'll be hacked down to, of course, we cannot give you absolute guarantee, but compared to the common practice people do out there, right? We want to just like giving that extreme level of security, right? Like those things you can't do in a rush, right? I can guarantee you, like for example, if some company comes to me, they're worried about quarterly earning, whatever things in there, right? They're not able to make that long decision. In the end, their client will suffer, right? Because these are really complex engineering things. Like for example, we use multi-cloud architecture. Not only we have redundancy within AWS, we're on Oracle Cloud, we're on Microsoft Azure. You say like, why would you go that level of extreme redundancy? Well, because I don't want my client to like I want to go so extreme for my client that they don't need to worry about. Literally, as if, for example, our infrastructure within AWS, right? We have all these redundancy all built in it, right? Like then if something happened to them, we switch to OCI, like that. Like so that's a level thing. Again, that also take extreme long planning, right? You had to do this massive engineering piece in there. So that's why for us is we think is about long game, right? Like we want to build the operating infrastructure for hospital, like these healthcare enterprises, right? We want to build them for the next 20, 30, 50 years, right? That's how we think. Then the way we think about the stock price in some sense, yes, up and down, the earning up and down, you definitely have some for, but by having these fundamental building block, then we think ultimately the market will reward us, right? Because we could do things that just no other company could do.
does when you look at the future performance of your company, in a privately held company, of course, you're looking at, the financials, EBITDA,
Mhm.
and every company's looking at that. Um, does market valuation, how does the financial KPIs change, if at all,
Yeah.
when you become a publicly traded company?
So I would say I tend to be maybe old school in a sense. So I like fundamentals, right? So the fundamental is like, is your company revenue growing in that, right? So we're pretty excited, right? Like we're gonna have, I think we're gonna release our Q3 numbers, in the next 1 to 2 weeks. I think people will be, just, the basic growth, the fundamental, like what client you're serving, all these things. I like to. So I think then from the fundamentals, you can get a little bit of these. Well, okay, where's your stock price? There are a lot of short seller pressure on these. And I think for us, we're coming through a SPAC background. Unfortunately, when we started SPAC journey, it was hot. By the time we finished, it was really cold. So just to show you how my amazing, foresight, if you will, or lack of foresight, right? So, but at the same time, we think it's okay just by being fundamental, right? Just build something technically that's is a foundational building block that you can have create a lot of volume in there. Then the revenue will catch up, the profit will catch up, and then the stock price also catch up as well. So that's why we sort of like, I mean, to be, and I know there's people talk about like long, short, like really we're aiming for the long game in this, right? Just build something people can use for the next 20 years.
So speaking of which, again, you started, co-founded VSee in 2008. There was a digital health market then.
Yeah,
I personally remember Microsoft. I don't know if it was called
yeah. It,
Digital Vault or Health Vault.
health mode, yeah.
Health Vault. Google had a solution and Microsoft had a solution. One was called Health Vault. I don't remember
Yeah,
which company had it, but there was the idea
yeah,
was that this was mostly for individuals, and they could be able to upload their health information uh, electronically, and then they'd be able to basically carry that with them. Now, there were two issues involved. One was that data is what is the term non-migratable,
mm,
and it's still a challenge at health
yeah,
record systems now. The Cernas, the Epics. That's it's tough to get that
yeah,
data to migrate. I have experience with kp.org, and
yeah,
you can only download it as a
yeah,
static PDF,
yeah,
and so that's frustrating. But the digital health market, the point is, it's been around a long time.
yeah.
How has it changed? What have you seen change? And then I guess this question transitions to the title of our session here about the digital health transformation and how it's slow and likely hacked. And so it gets
Yeah.
to the issue of security. I don't think cybersecurity was a priority back in the 2000s, the mid
Yeah.
2000s, and despite the recent hacks, and there are plenty of them to point out. It doesn't seem like companies are investing much in protecting the data of their patients and subscribers. So big question there, but what's
Yeah.
changed? What hasn't changed? And what do you think needs to change? Obviously, VSee is the solution, but more specifically, what is it that the digital health sector is missing when it comes to security?
Yeah. So the first thing is my answer might be slightly surprising, right? You could go to the conferences, they talk about, how these EMR companies, they make it difficult to, share their data. So that's a very protective turf, all these things for the hospital. So I actually take a slightly different approach in this. I think like if you look at Epic and Cerner or Oracle Health, other EMR companies, I think they have actually doing great job, right? They've been open up more system, adding API, like we've been tracking for some Epic, Cerner, they're doing good job with adding. And I think the problem, like for example, you mentioned things like the Kaiser versus the thing, right? Like you get a mega record, here's a PDF, you're not searchable. Like sometimes you still get like a thumb drive to try to So I think the thing is, it's about managing the complexity in there, right? So suppose that you're the CIO, the CTO, CMO, or any of these big organization in there, right? So it's just like there's so much complexity in your operations in there. If you actually were to, let's say, open things up a little bit easier, then you'll be literally like a sitting duck, right? You'll be so easy to hack. And again, is the software infrastructure you build. What created often like years ago, right? The best practice from two-factor authentication to how you manage database tracking. It was not reading the code. And now you try to go back to retrofit, and it's just like it's a very lengthy and extremely complicated process. So that's why I think is those enterprises, they are they do mean well, they want to do the right thing, but it just people I think underestimate how complicated it is, right? To touch the software that was written 30 years ago, go in there, even make the smaller change that you just open it, almost like like the massive, the Windows, the outages, globally, right? You saw that. It was a, a tiny, system file, just someone updated, and all of a sudden that triggered the like global like outage, right? It's about managing complexity, right? Just like so, I think healthcare is. So I think for me, like in terms of what needs to change there, right? So I think the number one thing is the way hospital healthcare system, the way they procure software in this. I think they need, if they could change that, you have, there's a natural progression, right? Then they will have so here's what I mean by it, right? So every single day, right, hospital, right, right, they put out RFPs to build some stuff, right? Typical way is here's a set of requirements. Right? Okay, great. Then you have people bid. The different people will bid on this. Typical one thing is about the cost. Okay, cost is important in this. Second one, what about usability in there? But what's interesting is like I have literally dealt with hundreds of these RFPs. I have never seen a single RFP say, I'm going to measure you by after I deploy your software, I make a change request, how fast you can make that change for me, and how do you guarantee you can do that securely? I've never seen that. But if you look at in these healthcare enterprise, that's exactly what you need, right? You need a software that deploy, then you change your mind because your workflow changes, or your security changes, right? How to do that, right? It's one of those things for me. It's like I'm a programming, I'm a software like nerd in it, right? So for hospital to RP, not make that the most important metric to consider is a little bit insane, right? Now, if you don't consider that, guess what? You're gonna get the software, you're gonna build it, and in terms you want to make changes where you might have the security. Because the reason interesting about security, right? Security is not static, right? There's always new attack vector in there. That means that software thing need to morph as your new attack vector come in there. That means you're forced to change all these things. But now if you cannot make changes, do it securely, reliably, robustly in there, you're going to just like you're guaranteed, right? You're going to be hacked over and over again in the future.
They, I chuckle to myself because a lot of articles say that healthcare information is that's hacked. I mean, it's the most valuable on
Yes. Yeah.
the black market and the deep web. And I chuckle because my credit card has been hacked twice in the last 6 months. So, but at least when someone's using my credit card, either I see charges on
Yeah.
my statement that I didn't
Yeah.
make, or a credit card will call me, the issuing company will call me. Why is healthcare data, personal health data information, whatever the right term is, why is this so valuable? Who is doing the hacking, and what are they doing with it?
Yeah. Great. So, so the one is the incentive for the hacker is ransom, right? So like what I mean is they right, so they hack into your system. They say, I'm going to expose all these data to the dark web or whatever. There's a huge financial penalty because the Health and Human Services, right? So when you have a HIPAA breach, there's a massive penalty in there, like associated. In fact, at the scale of this hacking, in there, right? If you read like the helping humans around how much they're supposed to find per individual medical records, that's if they use the true weight in there, like literally you could take this the biggest enterprises, you bankrupt them. They cannot afford to pay for that penalty in there. So because of that penalty, now as a hacker, it's a great leverage, right? Hacking the system. Hey, Aaron, okay, okay, how many millions of dollar Bitcoin if you don't send me that record is going out in there, right? So I think that's an incentive for people to hack in there. Now, then the other piece is on the individual level in there, right? So that information is has interesting value in different ways. Now, one is for example, you could say if you can search for, let's say, like some celebrity, their medical record, right? That it's sort of like, how you monetize them. Is I need to create a way to monetize them. So I think that one is a sense of deep intrusion on people's privacy, potential for blackmail, all the different things. It definitely sort of all there. Then of course, have these sort of medical record at scale. There was also like really interesting way to monetize them, to see patterns of what's going on maybe on a country level to understand, if you're dealing with an adversary in there, just like how many people are unhealthy, how many people are sick, how many people are these, right? I think it's one of those is we individual probably, like, I get my credit card record just like every now and then like get this thing, okay, send a new card. I feel like it's just part of the thing. But I feel like my medical record, that's something really, really valuable for me. Right? So I really want my husband, you better take really good care of my record in this.
What is the damage? So let me clarify a couple, uh,
Yeah.
pose a couple questions to clarify. Definitely, if a health provider has their systems hacked, there's a penalty there. There's
Yeah.
a reputational damage there. They're supposed to be,
Yeah.
taking care of the information. Um, well, before I go into further down that question, in your mind, who's the rightful owner of their health records?
Yeah. I think,
Is it the patient or is the
yeah.
doctor?
Yeah, I'm biased on that. Of course, should be the patient, right? So for me, it's just like, yes, you go see a doctor, and they're like that's my body, right? So it's my record. Of course, you need to belong to me, right? So I think, of course, I think like, practically in there, right? Sometimes it's the hospital. Again, I think it's not hospital doesn't want to do the right thing. I know you sometimes you go to conferences or some speaker talk about how, like hospital and keep your record as a lock-in so you don't go to the competitor hospital in there. Maybe a little bit of that in there, but I come from a software side. It's just that logistically, right, to able to, for example, to give you a medical record, do it in a safely in the framework. It just that's very, very complicated. So I think it's more like that's a limitation where easier just like, here, Aaron, here's a PDF in your system. Of course, if you get a PDF, you can't deal with it, manipulate the data, all these things. That's not very good. But you should be your record. In fact, one of the thing, so we are doing a massive, you probably like any other company, we do a lot of interesting AI work right now. Is I think on a personal level, my personal dream is able to take my medical record. So for example, recently I've been using this for continued glucose monitoring and tracking my health and all these things. I find it really interesting thing, right? The different food I eat, the way they impact my body in this, right? From fasting, all these things. So I want to cheat in the sense of I want to take my medical record, just match against, a couple of thousand other people that's similar to like me in this. So we do as a cohort and say, oh, like what are the issues or like what type of food, all these things, right? So those are things where once the medical record belongs to me, I could do different things in there. It's become really, really valuable to me. That's why I say yes, should be belong to the person.
So, so I, so going back to the question I was starting to pose, that when the health provider is
Yeah,
hacked, often that's because of ransom. That's a financial ransom. Pay
ransom.
us, 5,000 Bitcoin, $5 million, whatever it is. There's a financial ransom.
Yeah,
Um, Now, when a bank account or financial information is hacked, there's a direct impact on me and as a customer, whether it's my
yeah,
credit report, whether it's money out of my account.
yeah,
Why should, because I know that I should care that my health
yeah.
information is hacked, but Aaron Rose is no one knows Aaron Rose, but why should the average individual care that their health information has been stolen?
So, I mean, sometimes that's a great question in there, right? So, I mean, something you could say is probably you maybe some individuals they probably don't care, right? In the grand scheme of things, in there, right? Like, maybe some people are just very protective of their medical data. They really don't want people to know. Maybe they had a cancer before. Maybe they worry about, maybe somehow they got to the employers. They can't get insurance. But some of these are just more like, you know, maybe a theoretical discussion, if you will, in there, right? My hundred, there definitely is a spectrum just in the privacy, like people extreme versus, uh, but that's more on the individual basis. But I kind of think as a hospital, right? It is your duty to just take care of the record and keep us safe, right? It's really just again, it says you need to treat this as the most valuable piece of information you hold in there. There's really no reason why you should like be, like skipping things and cutting corners.
Okay. Um, what so you mentioned AI,
Yeah,
and so AI is mentioned everywhere. Whether people really understand it or not, that's a different story. I'm going to assume you understand AI, but what has AI done for your business, for VSee Health,
yeah,
but also what does your crystal ball say for AI in the sector that you're working in? And how will that benefit either, or how will that affect either
yeah.
negatively or positively, either the delivery of healthcare and
Mhm.
also for the patient experience?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. This. So what we are doing at VC, right? We're doing it for a couple of vectors, right? First is, for example, if you use VC, we have virtual scribe in the right. So instead of a physician or basically typing in their keyboard like one, so you could just have conversation in there, right? So AI will automatically fill the SOAP notes, generate the CPT codes, then we could use VC, will push out to the insurance exchange, and you get paid for the business. So you get really easy for the physician in there. Then we're adding things like decision support wrap around this to become a tool that help make decision, make better assessment, better decisions, and so on. Another area we're actually doing a lot of work on is this AI chatbot and live people in there, right? So you're going before you go to hospital, you want to ask questions, all that, right? Traditionally, it's just very complicated to find this information. We think this generative AI model is perfect. Then, of course, you want to able to talk to a live person, how to make that smooth transaction go well. The final area we're putting a lot of investment in AI is on telenursing. So the idea of a patient in the hospital, how to use camera with building AI, create virtual fencing, how to use AI to tell the patient is depressed, suicidal, stressed, their IV bag, urine bag, empty or full, like all these events, right? If you think about what a nurse needs to do in the ICU and so on, right? So now you have these AI-based events. So we think it's a huge saving on the clinical time. So these are the big three area. We are making personal bag. We're actually launching product and features, all these things. We're pretty excited. And if I were to step back a little, people, one of the common questions I get asked when I give talks like this, right, is AI overhyped or underhyped? Right? So, for example, if you look at the NVIDIA stock, right, it's almost hard to say they're under hype, right? So I actually believe is when it comes to healthcare, AI is actually underhyped, even despite all the hype there is. I think so. Here's why, right? So today, there's about 3,000 medical journal papers published just today, every single day, right? About 3,000. And that trend is actually increasing, right? So now the idea, right? You go to your doctor, right? How is it possible your doctor can read 3,000 journal a day, right? That's of course not going to limit down to specialty, all these things. It's not like the entire 3,000, but how could they even read one or two papers a day? It's just not possible, right? The medical knowledge are expanding so fast in this, right? That if you don't have AI, it's just impossible to make good clinical decisions in there, right? So this is why, like, so for example, a big push on the decision support wrap around this, right? So the idea at the finger touch the fingertip, right? You could actually pull in not only the clinical protocols in there, but you could pull in the relevant research into the thing, can making better decisions. And then the other piece, right? Is right. We do a lot of work in the low resource countries, right? For example, I've been to about 50 countries doing this in-field deployment. I went to Iraq multiple times. I went to Syria multiple times. I went to Africa like dozens a dozen times, Southeast Asia, dozen times, right? If you look at like in those scale, right, there's a couple billion people in there, right? There's just no way they're gonna have enough doctors and nurses. But if you have this AI decision support built in there, I can create a system, right, that can handle that couple billion people, give them really high quality medical care. That's why I think is AI is I just given all the hype there is still underhyped. People's going to be really shocked that like how what a big impact it would be.
So we shouldn't, we shouldn't be too worried about the perceived overvaluation of NVIDIA stock price.
Well, I would like I'll take a different slice in that, right? So NVIDIA is amazing when Jensen, like what he had done with the company, fantastic, right? I think as a sector, whether you bet individual stock in the right, maybe in a couple of years they get some big competitor, they come, but we don't know if those in there. But as a sector, as an impact on our people's lives in there, right? I think people still underhyped.
So we got few more minutes for a couple questions. One came in on the chat from the guest of the last Silicon Valley Forum Fireside Chat, and who is in Botswana with Midlivery, and they have the platform. You can read it in the chat. It's a long question, but and I don't want to spend too much time because it's really about the value. It's a really strategic advisory question that I don't think we're going to take the time to answer here. But it really comes down to how do you convey the market value to a VC to the different stakeholders, to investors, to your team members, to the doctors, the health insurance companies. I mean, we're looking at the list that Raphael included, but there is a question: is you're selling something,
Yeah,
and you have something of value. You think it's of
yeah.
value, but how do you convey that? How does the messaging change based on the stakeholder, your audience?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. So the value is definitely the different stakeholder that care different things. So for example, when we engage in hospital, so we have a couple of different stakeholders. Then for example, for the clinicians in there, is about they get to customize the workflow experience without doing any programming. We have a no-code architecture using a Lego building block. That, for example, you could create all these very sophisticated, complex workflows without writing a single line of code. So then the clinician, they get really excited. Say, oh, what? I don't need to wait for my IT. I don't need to hire a programmer to make these changes. Yes, so to draw a silly analogy, right? 10 years ago, you want to create a web page and hire some, Java, PHP, whatever programmer to build it for you. Today, you want to create a web page. Do you need to have any programmer? No, just like drag and drop, simple user interface. So we have taken that same approach. Now we empower the clinician. So the clinician, they get really excited. Now then the different stakeholder could be the operational manager, the CFOs in there, right? Now for them, it's about give me the data, the clinical dashboard. So for them, we create a system is a web widget, right? So anything you want to know about the operation, just a simple web widget, you can see from physician rating to how many claims you submitted, how much money you're collecting, like just like how much of all these things is there. So that's the value we create for them. Then of course for the security people, then we say, okay, like let's look at SOC 2, let's look at FedRAMP High, let's look at all these things. Let's look at how we manage security. This is how we do intrusion. And of course, more important, this is our software development process in this. How do we do a release in there? Right. I think by is the interesting about our approach is when you have this sort of Lego like building block approach, you could actually shuffle them different things, right? So the clinician want Lego shuffling there, but when I shuffle the Lego build, that doesn't change the security of the individual block. So that's why it's a one system that could create almost satisfy all the different stakeholders what they want in a single system.
That's a great answer. I'm reminded, and Raphael, thank you for joining us. And you asked a great question, Raphael. But I don't know if you joined in, Raphael, when I brought up the point that Microsoft and Google in
Mm,
the 2000s came out with their own digital health
mm,
record system, management system, and the argument was it just was too soon. Just people were not ready. The reason I was, I thought of value of it because I had a parent who had health issues, and I was kind of the lead person in my family, kind of managing the communication between my father and his caregiving team. So, and I was traveling all the time, and so, and I wasn't living in Denver. I was in
mm.
Seattle,
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
having that platform just
yeah.
for me to manage it was just amazing. But it was too soon. I think there's also the
Mm.
concern that a lot of it is too soon. We've got 2 minutes here. It would be remiss on us if we didn't address what happened in the United States election system. I think I talked to a good friend of mine up in Seattle today, and will Robert F. Kennedy become the Health and Human Services Secretary? I don't know. Lots of interesting things happening. The one thing that's interesting is that we do have a Republican president and we do have a Republican Congress, really Republican Senate.
Some,
And it looks like within a few days we'll get the confirmation that the Republicans probably have not just held on to their majority in the House of Representatives, have probably added to it. There is a question about Obamacare.
yeah.
The late John McCain, which gave the thumbs down on repealing it. He's no longer with us. The moderates has changed. I'm not going to ask you for a political question, but change is happening. Companies and leaders of companies, big and small, have to adapt their strategy based on the prevailing political winds. How does, if you don't want to talk about VSee specifically, that's good, that's okay. But how does a company in your sector adjust, and what does the crystal ball look
So,
like in your strategy or in the sector strategy into digitalization of the health sector?
so like if I were to use some crystal ball in this, right? So I think is so from both sides of the aisle, Republican, Democrat, right? So they all face the same problem, which is the healthcare system in the US is just too expensive. Right? It's getting to a point where whether your employer, that health insurance is like a big part of thing. It's actually going to your fundamental, profit, right? So as an individual, right, you're paying your monthly premiums, right? It's just whether you have a good, good health plan or you're like Uber driver, restaurant worker, it just becomes really, really expensive in this. So I think part of these were expenses. It's a really complicated system. Right? If, for example, you go to hospital, say operate on you, like hospital have no idea how much that surgery actually costs. Right? Which to me is a little bit like insane, right? No other business operate that, right? Can you imagine, like any other business out there? But unfortunately, that's it. Now, this is again not to blame the, like people tend to say, oh, the password, but it really is a very complicated thing, right? You have like hundreds and thousands of supplier chain, like all these, right? Like all these and you have to do it securely, all these things, right? So I think the what motivate us in there, which I think this is non-political. I think this matter who's in power, right? They need to take care of American people, right? At the end of the day, right? So then having control of the healthcare costs and the way you do that, sort of my very biased way, right? Put a really good healthcare operating system in there, like VSee or your competitor in there. Because once you have this, you make the doctors, the patients, give them great experience, but you get all the analytics. You now start tracking the costs, all the different things, right? Now for this to this, you can now start bending the curve of the healthcare, and then I think everybody wins.
Very good, very good. Well, it is two past the hour. I could definitely go on for another hour or two because I think we just got to the thin layer of really this industry. But it is despite that the digital health sector has been around for decades, really, but I do think that we are seeing the early stages, the early innings, to use a baseball
Yeah,
euphemism,
yeah,
of where the industry is going, and particularly with the addition of artificial intelligence and generative AI. So this is very exciting. Thank you, Milton, for being the uh, guest today. And thank you for everyone
yeah.
that's participated. And I thank everyone for their time. And we will see you again. Have a great day.
Thank, thank you so much.